First contact. Captain Zixera stood motionless on the bridge of the Cosmic Seeker, her four eyes fixed on the swirling blue and green orb displayed on the main view screen. The planet, third from its yellow star, rotated slowly, oblivious to the invisible watchers high above its atmosphere. "Remarkable," she breathed, her voice barely audible. "To think, after all this time." First Officer Venn approached, datapad in hand. "Captain, the initial scans are complete. The planet's composition matches our long-range data. Nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, vast liquid water oceans, diverse ecosystems. And..." He hesitated, mandibles clicking nervously. Zixera turned to face him, antenna twitching with curiosity. "Go on, Venn. What is it?" "The signals, Captain. They're everywhere. Radio waves, electromagnetic pulses, data streams. It's beyond anything we anticipated. This civilization isn't just broadcasting. They're drowning the local space in information." The captain chittered softly, a sound of both excitement and apprehension. "Show me." Venn tapped his datapad, and the main view screen changed. The serene image of the planet was replaced by a chaotic web of light, each strand representing a different type of signal emanating from the world below. It looked like a luminous spider's web had been spun around the entire globe. "By the Hive Mother," Zixera whispered. "It's beautiful and terrifying. Have we decrypted any of it yet?" "Science Officer Cree is working on it now," Venn replied. "She says the sheer volume and variety of data types is unprecedented. It might take days just to establish basic translation protocols." As if summoned by her name, Cree's voice crackled over the ship's comm system. "Captain, you need to see this. I've managed to isolate and decrypt a small video feed. It's, well, you should just look." The view screen flickered again, this time resolving into a strange image. It showed a bipedal creature, pink-skinned and fur-topped, gesticulating wildly at the camera. Behind it, garish text scrolled by, accompanied by flashing lights and pulsing music. "What in the name of the First Queen is that?" Venn asked, his usual composure slipping. Zixera leaned forward, fascinated. "That, I believe, is our first look at a living, breathing human." "Cree, what is it saying?" Cree's voice came back, sounding perplexed. "It seems to be trying to sell something. The translation is still rough, but it keeps mentioning limited time offers and unbeatable deals. I think it's some kind of merchant." "Fascinating," Zixera mused. "A species advanced enough for global communication networks, and they use it for commerce. Cree, keep working on the translations. I want to know everything we can about these humans." Over the next few solar rotations, the crew of the Cosmic Seeker worked tirelessly to unravel the mysteries pouring from the planet below. They intercepted and decrypted television broadcasts, radio shows, internet data packets, and more. The sheer volume of information was staggering, and the content often bewildering. Zixera found herself spending hours in her quarters, poring over reports and watching endless streams of human media. She was particularly fascinated by something called social media, where humans seemed to voluntarily share the minutiae of their lives with millions of strangers. On the fourth day of their observation, Zixera called a meeting of her senior staff. As they assembled in the ship's conference room, she could see the effects of their intensive study in their postures and expressions. Cree's eyes were wide and slightly unfocused, while Venn seemed to be suppressing some kind of rhythmic movement in his legs. "Report," Zixera ordered, pushing aside her own feelings of disorientation. "What have we learned?" Cree spoke first, her words tumbling out in an uncharacteristic rush. "Captain, it's incredible. The humans have developed a global information network they call the Internet. It contains, well, everything. Scientific data, historical records, cultural artifacts, personal communications, and they make it all freely available. I've never seen anything like it." Venn nodded, adding, "Their technology is primitive compared to ours, but their rate of advancement is exponential. They went from basic flight to rudimentary space exploration in less than a century. If they continue at this pace, they could be a galactic power within a few generations. Zix's era finished for him. The High Council will want to know about this immediately. But before we send our report, I want to be sure we understand what we're dealing with. These humans are unpredictable. The ship's chief medical officer, Dr. Lan, cleared her throat. Captain, I have some concerns about the crew's exposure to human media. I've noticed some unusual behaviors and physiological changes. Nothing severe yet, but Zixera's antenna twitched with concern. What kind of changes, Doctor? Altered sleep patterns, increased agitation, obsessive behaviors, Lan replied. And there's something else. Several crew members have reported vivid imaginings. Daydreams, they called them. It's as if the human media is stimulating parts of our brains in ways we've never experienced before. A heavy silence fell over the room. The implications were troubling. If mere exposure to human information could affect their species so profoundly, what would direct contact do? Zixera stood, her decision made. We need more data. Then, I want a team assembled for a covert surface mission. Full environmental precautions, of course. We need to observe these humans up close. Captain, Ven protested. The risks are necessary. Zixera cut him off. We can't make a full report to the High Council based solely on their broadcasts. We need to see how they live, how they interact, and we need to understand why their information affects us so strongly. As the senior staff filed out to prepare for the mission, Zixera turned back to the view screen, watching the blue planet spin. She felt a mix of excitement and dread. Whatever they discovered on the surface would change everything. Their civilization had long wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was more complex and frightening than they could have imagined. The humans, oblivious to the watchers above, continued their chaotic dance of information and innovation. And high above them, on the bridge of an invisible ship, an alien captain prepared to take the next step into a new and uncertain future. As Zixera retired to her quarters to prepare for the upcoming surface mission, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The humans, with their bizarre mix of primitive technology and information mastery, represented a puzzle that defied easy categorization. She activated her personal console, intending to review the mission parameters one last time. Instead, she found herself drawn into a human website that Kree had flagged as particularly popular. As she scrolled through the endless stream of images, text, and videos, Zixera felt a strange sensation building in her mind. It was as if each piece of information was a drop of water, and her consciousness was a cup rapidly filling to overflowing. With an effort, she tore herself away from the screen, mandibles clicking in agitation. This, she realized, was what Dr. Lan had warned about. The human information wasn't just data. It was somehow more. It stirred thoughts and feelings that Zixera had never experienced before. As she lay down to rest, preparing for the challenges ahead, Zixera found herself doing something entirely new. She began to imagine, to dream, of what they might find on the planet's surface. And in the back of her mind, a small voice wondered if they were truly ready for what awaited them in the world below. Information overload. The surface of Earth loomed large in the view screen as the small shuttle descended through the planet's atmosphere. Inside, Captain Zixera and her hand-picked team sat in tense silence, each lost in their own thoughts about the mission ahead. Remember, Zixera said, breaking the quiet, we are here to observe only. No contact with the natives, no interference. We're after information, nothing more. Ven nodded, adjusting his holographic camouflage suit. Understood, Captain, but I still have reservations about this mission. The effects we've observed from their transmissions alone. All the more reason to understand them better, Zixera replied firmly. We need to know if proximity increases the impact. As the shuttle touched down in a secluded forest clearing, The team activated their personal cloaking devices. They emerged into the cool night air, their forms shimmering slightly before blending seamlessly with their surroundings. Incredible, breathed Cree, her scientific curiosity overtaking her apprehension. The biodiversity here is off the charts. And look at the sky. You can barely see the stars through all the artificial light. Zixara's antenna twitched, picking up a cacophony of unfamiliar sounds and scents. Stay focused. We're heading for the nearest population center. Remember your training and report any unusual sensations immediately. The alien team moved silently through the forest, their advanced technology allowing them to navigate effortlessly despite their invisibility. As they approached the outskirts of a small town, the sensory assault intensified. Bright lights, pungent smells, and a constant background hum of machinery and distant voices bombarded them. "Captain," Ven whispered, his voice trained, "I'm experiencing some disorientation. It's as if my mind can't process all this input." Zixara felt it too, a buzzing in her brain like static electricity building up with nowhere to discharge. "Acknowledged. We'll proceed in short bursts. Cree, start your scans." As they moved through the sleeping town, Cree's handheld device hungrily absorbed data. Wi-Fi signals, cellular transmissions, and electromagnetic emissions all flowed into the alien computer, to be analyzed later. But it was the glimpses into human homes that truly captivated the team. Through windows, they saw humans engaged in a myriad of activities. Some stared at glowing screens, their faces bathed in blue light. Others slept restlessly, surrounded by devices that blinked and hummed ceaselessly. In one home, a group gathered around a larger screen, laughing uproariously at images that made no sense to the alien observers. "It's chaotic," Ven said, his usual composure slipping. "How do they live like this? The constant stimulation, the noise, the information." Cree finished for him, her voice filled with awe. "It's everywhere. They're swimming in it, breathing it. Look." She pointed to a human walking down the street, face illuminated by a small handheld device. Even in the middle of the night, it seemed, the flow of data never ceased. As dawn approached, Zixara made the decision to return to their ship. The team had collected more raw data in a few hours than they typically would in weeks of observation on other worlds. But more concerning were the effects on her crew. Ven was uncharacteristically jittery, his movements erratic. Cree couldn't seem to focus on any one thing for more than a few seconds, her eyes darting about wildly. And Zixara herself felt a strange urge she'd never experienced before, a desire to shed her cloaking device and simply interact with this fascinating species. Back aboard the Cosmic Seeker, the team underwent immediate medical evaluation. Dr. Land's findings were troubling. "Your neurotransmitter levels are all over the place," she reported, mandibles clicking with concern. "It's as if your brains have been overstimulated to the point of mild trauma. I'm also detecting unusual activity in regions we typically associate with imagination and creativity." Zixara nodded, trying to ignore the persistent buzz in her mind. "Recommendations, Doctor. Rest. Isolation. No exposure to the human data streams for at least a full planetary rotation," Land said firmly. "We need to let your systems reset." But as the team dispersed to their quarters, Zixara knew it wouldn't be that simple. The experience on the surface had changed them. She could see it in the way Cree's hands twitched, as if longing to grab her data pad and dive back into the sea of human information. She could hear it in Ven's voice, a new cadence that eerily mimicked the rhythms of human speech. In her own quarters, Zixara found herself unable to sleep. Images from the planet's surface flashed through her mind. The glowing screens, the restless humans, the ceaseless flow of data. Without conscious thought, she found herself activating her personal console. "I'll just check a few things," she murmured to herself, "just to organize my thoughts for the report." Hours slipped by unnoticed as Zixara immersed herself in human culture. She marveled at their art, so full of imagination and emotion. She lost herself in their music, feeling rhythms that seemed to resonate with something deep inside her. And their stories. Tales of worlds that never were, of futures that might be, of heroes and villains locked in eternal struggle, captivated her in a way nothing ever had before. A sharp knock at her door jolted Zixera back to reality. She looked up, disoriented, to see Ven standing in the doorway, his expression a mix of concern and excitement. "Captain," he said, his words coming fast and clipped, "you need to see this. Kree's made a breakthrough with the human internet. It's beyond anything we imagined." Pushing aside her fatigue, Zixera followed Ven to the ship's main laboratory. Inside, she found Kree surrounded by holographic displays, her 4 arms working furiously across multiple interfaces. "Captain," Kree exclaimed, her eyes wide and feverish. "I've done it. I've mapped their global information network. It's beautiful. Look." With a gesture, Kree expanded one of the holograms. It showed a 3-dimensional representation of Earth, surrounded by a complex web of light. Each strand represented a different type of data flow: social media, entertainment, financial transactions, scientific exchanges. "It's like a living thing," Kree said, her voice filled with wonder. "It grows, it adapts, it evolves. And the humans, they're not just using it. They're part of it. It's changing them, and they're changing it." Zixera stared at the display, feeling a mix of awe and dread. The complexity of the human information ecosystem was breathtaking, but as she watched the pulses of data flow across the globe, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were witnessing something dangerous. "Kree," she said slowly, "how long have you been working on this?" The science officer blinked, seeming to come back to herself slightly. I'm not sure. What time is it?" "You've been in here for nearly 2 planetary rotations," Ven supplied, his own voice tight with worry. Zixera's antenna drooped. Despite Dr. Land's warnings, despite her own orders, they had all fallen back into the addictive lure of human data. And now, looking at her 2 most trusted officers, she could see the toll it was taking. Kree's usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, her exoskeleton dull from lack of proper care. Ven's movements were jerky and unpredictable, his eyes never resting on one spot for more than a moment. And Zixera herself felt different. Ideas and images flashed through her mind, concepts she had no words for in her own language. "We need to contact the High Council," Zixera said, forcing herself to focus. "This situation is escalating beyond our ability to control. The humans and their information network, they're not just a curiosity. They're a potential threat." As she turned to leave the lab, Zixera caught sight of her reflection in a darkened screen. For a moment, she didn't recognize herself. There was something new in her eyes, a spark that hadn't been there before. With a start, she realized what it was: imagination. The humans hadn't just shown them a new world. They had changed the very way the aliens thought. And as Zixera hurried to compose her report to the High Council, she couldn't shake the feeling that this change, once started, could never be undone. Chaos aboard. The Cosmic Seeker, once a model of efficiency and order, had descended into a state of barely controlled chaos. As Captain Zixera made her way through the corridors, she could feel the change in the air. A palpable tension, punctuated by bursts of manic energy from her crew. Crew members huddled in corners, their personal devices glowing as they feverishly consumed human media. Others engaged in heated debates about Earth concepts they barely understood: democracy, fashion, memes. The ship's internal communication system, usually reserved for official business, now buzzed constantly with snippets of human music and dialogue from Earth entertainment. Zixera's mandibles clicked in agitation as she entered the bridge. The scene that greeted her did nothing to ease her growing concern. Ven, usually the picture of military precision, was slumped in his chair, giggling softly to himself as he scrolled through something on his datapad. Cree, on the other hand, was a whirlwind of activity, her 4 arms working across multiple interfaces simultaneously. "Status report," Zixera demanded, trying to inject some normalcy into the situation. Ven looked up, his eyes unfocused. "Oh, Captain, you've got to see this. The humans have these things called cat videos. They're hilarious. Look, this one is trying to fit into a tiny box." Zixera felt a headache building behind her eyes. "Ven, focus. What's our ship status?" Cree interjected before Ven could respond. "Captain, I've made incredible progress. I've developed an algorithm to process human social media trends. We can predict their cultural evolution with 73% accuracy over a 6-month period. And that's not all. I think I've cracked their entertainment industry. We could produce content that would absolutely dominate their viral markets." "Enough," Zixera shouted, her patience finally snapping. The bridge fell silent, crew members looking at her with a mixture of surprise and guilt. "We are not here to make cat videos or manipulate human culture. We are here to observe and report. Has anyone remembered to send our findings to the High Council?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the bridge. Zixera's antenna drooped in dismay. "By the First Queen, how long has it been since our last communication?" After a moment of nervous glances, one of the junior officers spoke up. 11 planetary rotations, Captain." Zixera felt a wave of panic wash over her. 11 days without contact, in clear violation of mission protocols. The High Council would be furious if they weren't already sending a rescue mission. "Ven, establish communication with Home Command immediately," she ordered. "Cree, prepare a data package of our most crucial findings. And someone find Dr. Lan. We need a full medical evaluation of the crew." As her officers scrambled to comply, Zixera retreated to her ready room. She needed a moment to collect her thoughts, to try and make sense of what was happening to her ship and her crew. But as soon as the door closed behind her, she felt the now familiar pull of her personal console. Almost without conscious thought, her hand reached out to activate it. "No," she muttered, pulling back. "Focus, Zixera. You're the captain. You need to regain control." A chime from her communication device interrupted her internal struggle. It was Dr. Lan, her voice tight with stress. "Captain, we have a situation in the medical bay. Several crew members are exhibiting extreme symptoms, hallucinations, paranoid delusions, manic behavior. I'm not sure how to treat this." Zixera felt her heart stink. "I'm on my way, Doctor. Do what you can to keep them calm." As she hurried through the ship, Zixera could see the situation deteriorating rapidly. Crew members argued loudly in the corridors, some spouting human phrases and references she didn't understand. Others sat in corners, rocking back and forth, mumbling about followers and likes. In the medical bay, the scene was even worse. Several crew members were restrained on beds, their limbs thrashing as they shouted incoherently. Dr. Lan moved between them, administering sedatives and looking increasingly overwhelmed. "Captain," Lan said as Zixera entered, "I've never seen anything like this. Their brain chemistry is completely unbalanced. It's as if their minds are trying to rewire themselves to process information like humans do, but our biology can't handle it." Zixera watched as one of the affected crew members, an engineer she'd known for years, babbled about something called cryptocurrency and how it would revolutionize the galactic economy. "Can you reverse it?" Zixera asked, already dreading the answer. Dr. Lan's mandibles clicked nervously. I don't know. This isn't like a virus or a toxin. It's as if their very thought patterns have been altered. And Captain, it's spreading. More crew members are showing early symptoms every hour. A cold fear gripped Zixera. This was no longer just a mission gone awry. It was turning into an existential threat to her entire crew. "Doctor, I want you to work on a way to block the effects of human information on our brains, some kind of shield or dampener. In the meantime, we need to limit exposure." Shut down all non-essential communication systems. No more access to Earth networks except through secure, filtered channels. As Zixera turned to leave, Dr. Land caught her arm. "Captain, are you sure you're all right? You've had as much exposure as anyone." Zixera paused, considering. She could feel the changes in herself, the racing thoughts, the newfound creativity, the constant urge to connect and share and consume information. But unlike many of her crew, she was still functioning, still in control. Mostly. "I'm fine, Doctor," she said, not entirely sure if it was true. "Focus on helping the others." Back on the bridge, Zixera found Ven struggling to establish communication with Home Command. The usually robust quantum entanglement system seemed to be malfunctioning. "It's not working, Captain," Ven said, frustration evident in his voice. "Every time I try to connect, the system gets flooded with jump data, memes, video clips, advertisement jingles. It's like the human internet is fighting back against us leaving." Zixera felt a chill run down her carapace. Was it possible? Had they unleashed something that could actively interfere with their technology? "Keep trying," she ordered. "We need to warn the High Council about what's happening here." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Kree's voice, higher pitched than usual with excitement, came over the comm system. "Captain, you need to see this. I've detected a massive surge in Earth's information output. It's beautiful." On the main view screen, the image of Earth appeared, but instead of the serene blue and green orb they were used to, it was now surrounded by a pulsating, multicolored aura of data streams. The intensity was almost blinding. "What's happening?" Zixera demanded, her antenna twitching in alarm. Kree's response was rapid fire, her words tumbling over each other. "It appears to be some kind of global event. Social media activity is off the charts. Streaming services are overloaded. Fascinating. They call it a viral challenge. Millions of humans are participating simultaneously, creating and sharing content at an unprecedented rate." As they watched, the data aura around Earth grew even brighter, tendrils of information reaching out into space like grasping fingers. "Shut it down," Zixera ordered, a note of panic in her voice. "Shut down all receivers, now." But it was too late. The ship's systems, long since compromised by their deep dive into human data, seemed to have a mind of their own. Screens all over the bridge lit up with a cacophony of human faces, all participating in some incomprehensible activity involving dance moves and dubbed audio. Crew members who had been barely holding on to their sanity broke down completely, some joining in the dance, others curling into fetal positions, overwhelmed by the sensory assault. In the midst of the chaos, Zixera stood frozen, watching as her crew and her mission fell apart around her. The realization hit her like a physical blow. They were no longer in control. The human information had won. As the cosmic seeker drifted in Earth's orbit, its systems overloaded and its crew lost in a haze of memes and viral challenges, Captain Zixera made a desperate decision. They needed to escape, to warn their people about the mimetic hazard that Earth represented. But first, they had to regain control of their own minds. With a heavy heart, Zixera reached for the emergency protocols. It was time for drastic measures. As she input the command for a ship-wide neural reboot, she could only hope that there would be enough of their original selves left when they woke up. The last thing Zixera saw before the reboot took effect was the image of Earth on the view screen, its data aura pulsing like a heartbeat. In that moment, she understood with terrifying clarity. They had come to study humanity, but in the end, humanity had transformed them in ways they could never have imagined. Escape and quarantine. The emergency klaxons blared throughout the cosmic seeker as Captain Zixera regained consciousness. Her head throbbed, and fragmented memories swirled in her mind. A kaleidoscope of human images, sounds, and concepts that didn't quite fit together. With effort, she pushed herself up from the floor of the bridge, surveying the scene around her. Crew members lay sprawled across consoles and on the floor, slowly stirring as the neural reboot took effect. Zixera's mandibles clicked anxiously as she watched them, searching for signs that the procedure had worked as intended. Ven was the first to fully awaken, groaning as he pulled himself into a sitting position. "Captain, what happened?" "Neural reboot," Zixera replied, her voice hoarse. "It was necessary. How do you feel?" Ven's antenna twitched as he considered the question. "Strange. Like I've been dreaming, but I can't quite remember what about." He paused, his eyes widening. "The mission. Captain, I know," Zixera cut him off. "We lost control. But now we need to focus. Can you get to your station? We need to assess our situation." As more of the crew regained consciousness, a semblance of order slowly returned to the bridge. Zixera breathed a sigh of relief as her officers resumed their posts, their movements becoming more assured as muscle memory took over. "Status report," she commanded, settling into her captain's chair. Cree, her movements less frenetic than before, but still quick, ran her hands over her console. "All systems operational, Captain. But there's something strange. Our databases, they're different." "Different how?" Zixera asked, a note of dread in her voice. "It's as if they've been expanded," Cree replied, her tone a mix of confusion and awe. "There's so much new information, scientific theories, cultural data, even creative works. I don't understand where it all came from." Zixera felt a chill run down her carapace. Even with the neural reboot, it seemed the human information had left its mark. "Lock down all non-essential databases," she ordered. "We'll deal with that later. Right now, our priority is getting away from Earth and contacting Home Command." Ven spoke up from his station, his voice tight with concern. "Captain, we have a problem. Our long-range communications are still down, and the short-range systems, they're picking up signals from Earth." The main view screen flickered to life, showing the blue planet below them. But now, instead of the blinding data aura they had seen before, there were distinct beams of energy emanating from various points on the surface, all aimed directly at the cosmic seeker. "They've detected us," Zixera breathed, her heart's racing. "Somehow, they know we're here." The ship suddenly shuddered, rocked by an unseen force. Alarms blared as new warnings flashed across the crew's consoles. "What was that?" Zixera demanded, gripping the arms of her chair. "Some kind of focused electromagnetic pulse," Cree reported, her fingers flying over her controls. "It's not damaging our systems, but, Captain, I think they're trying to communicate." Before Zixera could respond, the view screen changed again. The image of Earth disappeared, replaced by a face, a human face. The creature looked directly at them, its lips moving in what was clearly speech, though no sound came through. "Can we get audio?" Zixera asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Cree worked furiously at her station, working on it. "Their transmission protocols are unusual, but I think I can." There. Suddenly, a voice filled the bridge, a human voice, speaking in a language none of them had ever heard before, and yet they understood. "No, you are out there. We have detected your presence and track your activities. We mean you no harm, but we request that you identify yourselves and state your intentions. We are prepared to establish peaceful first contact." Zixera cut the audio with a sharp gesture. Her mind raced. Somehow, in the short time they had been observing Earth, the humans had not only detected their presence, but had managed to track them, target them, and even begin to decipher their communication systems. It was unprecedented, impossible, and terrifying. "We need to leave," she said, her voice firm despite the fear gripping her. "Now, before they can do anything else. Ven, plot a course out of the system, maximum speed. Cree, I want every scrap of data we've collected on the humans encrypted and quarantined. No one accesses it without my direct authorization. As her crew scrambled to comply, Zixera felt a moment of deep regret. They had come here to study, to learn, to expand their understanding of the universe. Instead, they were fleeing in panic, carrying with them a mimetic infection that could potentially threaten their entire civilization. The Cosmic Seeker's engines roared to life, and the ship began to pull away from Earth's orbit. But as they did, the human transmissions intensified. The view screen flickered with a rapid succession of images. Mathematical equations, diagrams of what looked like rudimentary faster-than-light drive designs, and messages in dozens of different writing systems. They're trying to give us information, Cree said, her voice filled with wonder. Captain, I think they're offering to share their knowledge with us. For a moment, Zixera hesitated. The scientist in her longed to stay, to learn, to engage with this fascinating species that had already changed them so profoundly. But the captain, responsible for the safety of her crew and the security of her civilization, knew they couldn't take the risk. Maintain course, she ordered, her voice heavy. We can't trust anything they send us. For all we know, it could be another attack on our systems. As the Cosmic Seeker accelerated away from Earth, the human transmissions began to fade. The last image they saw before leaving the solar system was a simple one, a cartoon-like drawing of a human figure, arm outstretched in what seemed to be a gesture of farewell or invitation. Days passed as the ship hurtled through space, putting as much distance between themselves and Earth as possible. Zixera ordered regular neural scans of the crew, watching anxiously for any signs that the human mimetic infection was reasserting itself. To her relief, the worst of the symptoms seemed to have passed. But there were changes. Crew members reported vivid dreams, bursts of creativity, and new ways of thinking about old problems. It was as if their encounter with humanity had awakened something in their minds, something that couldn't be fully suppressed. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they re-established contact with Home Command. Zixera took a deep breath as she prepared to make her report. How could she possibly explain what had happened? How could she convey the danger and the potential that humanity represented? As the familiar face of the High Commander appeared on the view screen, Zixera felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief at finally being able to share their burden, fear of what might happen next, and something else, a small, rebellious part of her mind that whispered of missed opportunities, of wonders left unexplored. High Commander, she began, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. I regret to inform you that our mission to observe the third planet of the Sol system has encountered complications. The High Commander's expression grew grave as Zixera recounted their experiences, the initial fascination with human culture, the gradual loss of control, the desperate escape. When she finished, there was a long, heavy silence. Captain Zixera, the High Commander, finally spoke, his tone somber. Your report is disturbing, to say the least. You understand that we cannot risk this mimetic infection spreading to our homeworld. Zixera's antenna drooped. She had expected this, but it still hurt to hear. I understand, High Commander. What are your orders? The Cosmic Seeker and all aboard her are hereby placed under strict quarantine. The High Commander declared. You will proceed to the isolation station in the Outer Rim. There, you and your crew will undergo extensive evaluation and decontamination. All data related to Earth will be sequestered for further study under the highest security protocols. Zixera nodded, accepting the inevitable. But as she turned to relay the orders to her crew, she caught sight of her reflection in a darkened console. There was something different in her eyes now. A spark of imagination, of curiosity that hadn't been there before their encounter with humanity. And in that moment, Zixera realized a profound truth. No matter what happened next, no matter how thoroughly they were decontaminated, they could never truly go back to who they were before. Humanity had changed them, for better or worse, and that change was now a part of them. As the Cosmic Seeker set course for the isolation station, Zixera allowed herself one last look at the starfield behind them, in the direction of the small blue planet that had so thoroughly upended their lives. Despite everything, despite the danger and the uncertainty, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of excitement. They had discovered something extraordinary out there in the darkness of space, and somehow, she knew, this was only the beginning. Galactic repercussions. The isolation station hung in space like a glittering snowflake, its crystalline structure a stark contrast to the inky void surrounding it. Inside, Captain Zixera stood at the viewport of her assigned quarters, her 4 eyes fixed on the distant stars. It had been 3 standard cycles since the Cosmic Seeker had been escorted here, its crew immediately separated and subjected to intensive decontamination procedures. A chime at her door broke Zixera's reverie. "Enter," she called, turning to face her visitor. Dr. Land stepped into the room, datapad in hand. The medical officer looked tired, her usually sleek exoskeleton dull with stress. "Captain, I have the latest results from the crew's evaluations." Zixera's antenna twitched with anticipation. "And it's complicated," Land said, her mandibles clicking nervously. "Physically, everyone checks out. No lasting damage from our exposure to Earth's transmissions. But mentally," she trailed off, seeming unsure how to continue. "Go on, Doctor," Zixera prompted gently. Land took a deep breath. "The changes we observed during our mission appear to be permanent. Increased creativity, enhanced problem-solving abilities, even mild telepathic sensitivity in some cases. It's as if our encounter with human culture has evolved us, somehow." Zixera nodded slowly. She had suspected as much. She could feel the changes in herself. A newfound curiosity, a tendency to question long-held assumptions, flashes of imagination that sometimes startled her with their vividness. "And how is the High Council taking this news?" she asked. "That's the other reason I'm here," Land replied. "They've called for a full assembly to discuss our findings and determine the official response to the Earth situation. You've been asked to testify." Zixera's heart quickened. This was her chance to shape her people's understanding of humanity, to perhaps bridge the gap between their civilizations. But as she prepared to leave for the council chambers, a nagging doubt gnawed at her. Could she truly convey the complexity, the danger, and the wonder of humanity to those who hadn't experienced it firsthand? The great hall of the High Council was a cavernous space, its vaulted ceilings lost in shadow far above. Thousands of representatives from across the galaxy sat in tiered rows, their varied forms a testament to the diversity of the Alliance. At the center, elevated on a dais, sat the 7 members of the High Council itself. As Zixera took her place at the speaker's podium, she felt the weight of countless eyes upon her. The High Commander's voice boomed out, officially beginning the proceedings. "Captain Zixera, you stand before us to give testimony regarding your mission to the planet designated Earth and the species known as humans. We have reviewed your written reports. Please summarize for the Assembly the key points of your findings and your recommendations for our future approach to this potential threat." Zixera's antenna quivered as she gathered her thoughts. This was the moment that would define humanity's place in the galactic community, and possibly the future of her own species as well. "Esteemed members of the High Council, honored representatives," she began, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "Our mission to Earth revealed a species unlike any we have encountered before. Humans possess a unique relationship with information and creativity that poses both incredible opportunities and significant dangers." She went on to describe the initial fascination with human culture, the gradual loss of control experienced by her crew, and the transformative effects of prolonged exposure to Earth's data streams. As she spoke, she could see the reactions rippling through the assembly. Shock, disbelief, fear, and in some cases, unmistakable curiosity. "It is my belief," Zixera continued, "that humanity represents a turning point for our galactic civilization. Their ability to innovate, to imagine, to create, it far surpasses our own. If we could find a way to safely interact with them, to learn from them without losing ourselves. The potential benefits are incalculable. Murmurs swept through the chamber. One of the council members, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, spoke up. But Captain, your own experiences demonstrate the danger. How can we risk exposing our entire civilization to this mimetic hazard? Zixera's mandibles clicked as she considered her response. The risk is real, yes. But consider this. My crew and I were unprepared for what we encountered. Now that we know what to expect, we can develop safeguards, filters to protect our minds while still allowing us to learn and grow. Another council member, a massive, multi-limbed being, interjected. And what of the humans themselves? Your report indicates they detected your presence. How long before they developed the means to reach us? Should we not consider preventative measures? The implication was clear, and Zixera felt a chill run through her. Honored Council, I must strongly advise against any aggressive action. Yes, the humans advanced rapidly once they detected us, but their first instinct was to attempt communication, to offer knowledge freely. I believe they could be valuable allies if approached correctly. The debate raged for hours. Some representatives argued for immediate quarantine of the entire sector containing Earth. Others pushed for aggressive study and exploitation of human creativity. A few fringe voices even suggested full-scale invasion to neutralize the potential threat. Throughout it all, Zixera stood firm, advocating for a measured approach, careful study, gradual contact, and mutual exchange of knowledge under controlled conditions. As the assembly finally wound down, the High Commander called for a recess to consider all that had been said. Zixera retreated to a small antechamber, her mind whirling with the implications of the day's discussions. She was surprised to find Ven waiting for her, his posture tense, but his eyes bright with an emotion she couldn't quite place. Captain, he said, his voice low and urgent. There's something you need to know, something I've kept from the Council. Zixera's antenna twitched with concern. What is it, Ven? He glanced around, ensuring they were alone, then leaned in close. During our quarantine, I've been experimenting with the changes in my mind. I think I've made contact. Contact. Zixera repeated, not quite understanding. With whom? With Earth, Ven whispered, his eyes wide. Or rather, with someone on Earth. It's faint, like a dream, but I'm certain it's real. They're reaching out, Captain. They want to connect. Zixera felt as if the floor had dropped out from under her. If Ven was right, if this connection was real, it changed everything. The humans weren't just a potential threat or a source of fascinating information. They were active participants in this cosmic dance. Before she could respond, a chime sounded, calling them back to the council chamber. As they walked, Zixera's mind raced. Should she reveal this new information? What would it mean for the council's decision? As they re-entered the Great Hall, Zixera made her choice. The galaxy was changing, evolving. Her people could either embrace that change or be left behind. And perhaps, just perhaps, this unexpected connection between species was the key to navigating the challenges ahead. The High Commander's voice rang out, silencing the assembly. We have reached a decision. Based on the testimony provided and the potential threat level, we hereby decree that the sector containing the planet Earth shall be. Zixera stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. Honored Council, esteemed representatives, I have new information that must be considered before any final decision is made. As all eyes turned to her, Zixera felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. Whatever happened next, she knew that the encounter with humanity had set them all on a new path. The galaxy would never be the same, and deep down, she was thrilled to see where this journey would lead them. In that moment, as she prepared to reshape the future of galactic relations, Zixera realized that the true gift of humanity wasn't just their creativity or their information. It was the spark they had ignited in her people, a drive to explore, to question, to imagine new possibilities. The age of simple observation was over. A new era of cosmic cooperation, or conflict, was about to begin. And Six's era, changed forever by her encounter with Earth, was ready to lead the way into this brave new universe.